Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining our session. I know everyone is still probably recovering from GITEX because that was quite a week, and we were glad to be back in the thick of things. And I hope a lot of you came by our stand and saw us there. We are going to jump straight into it. This session is going to be very hands-on, and we're going to go really quickly on this. The last sessions we did, we concentrated a bit more on the topics, and they were stretched out. But now this time, we are really going to be going pretty fast. So if you do find yourself struggling to follow along with anything, we will be posting it also to our website, so you can always view it back, but try to catch up as you are going on. Now, before I share my screen, I'm just gonna, okay, the first thing I want to do before anyone catches up, I'm assuming everyone has, like, we sent you an instruction to come and follow along on to activate the PTC live developer trial. So that is going to serve as the cloud for us. So that is going to cover every single thing that we need in there. So you will just have to log on to that. So whenever we say server, we mean your own personal PTC cloud. And it's very simple to get set up. I will show you right now how to do that. But the first thing that we want to do is, before we start, I want to just connect quickly to our GitHub. Okay, this is actually our the ThingWorx Foundation. So I'm assuming everyone has come to this screen. You just have to sign up. It's a free account. There's a lot of goodies on the developer portal also. So including what we are showing you today, there are lots of guides, there are lots of learning parts. In fact, stuff that we have adapted also into our material, but in much more detail. So please do sign on for the developer account. And then when you come here, go to free trials and come to PTC Cloud, right? And you can access a free 30-day hosted trial, which will give you full access to your own server. So you can act as have your own server for 30 days. You can also download the full version, which is 3-month long, trial, which is unheard of in the enterprise software version, but they really do give you a lot of chance to learn the material before you do. So for now, we're just going to use the PTC Cloud, but if you want to use it for a 3-month long trial version, you can go for the local install. It's very simple. You don't have to, although it uses Apache and a few different things, all of the local install takes care of everything. So you pretty much just have to install and start it up, and you will have a server on your thing. Now, what I wanted to also show you, what's very important, please do note this, just go to our GitHub. You can see the page above, github.com/the-assembly. That's our GitHub where we put all our things. You'll find about 150 repositories there. So just go on there and go to the repositories and select the first one. Okay, there's not much code, but there are 4 files here. And I think totally it's about 6 MB, 5 to 6 MB. So what I want you to do is just download these 4 files. These 4 files, I'll just quickly tell you what is what. The Edge connection workshop is the PDF I was showing you, so you can follow along there. Edge MicroServer is a software we have to use. It's only 4 MB. Make sure you download that. That's very important. CSV parser extension is something we'll use later on in the session, but if you don't want to use that, that's also fine. That will come only towards the end. Code snippets will contain, I did tell you that this is very low code, but there is some code that we need. So code snippets has all the configuration files and everything that we will need. So do get all these files. All you have to do in GitHub is just go to download zip, right? And you'll get all these files. So these 4 files, keep them somewhere in a directory. I'm going to tell you where to put them, and we'll go over that in detail. Okay, so I'm just going to stop share again because I'm just going to come back. Okay, there we are. Okay, so I'm going to start sharing my PowerPoint again. So then we can go over there. There are a few basics to cover. I'm going to go really fast on the theory part. We're not going to get dragged into that. There isn't much, but whatever is there, if you do feel the urge to see a bit more, you can always check it out there. Let me just share there we go. A quick thing, I mean, most of you would be familiar with this. You would have seen that in the intro as well. About the assembly, we're not a new entity. We've been around since 2014, and we've done almost 300 free workshops since then. Most of them have been in person, except in this crisis where we have switched over to exclusively online, although we have started again doing a few workshops. So we did a 3D printing workshop a few weeks ago in person. Our workshops come into 3 categories, which we've organized. Hack would consider workshops like today, where we work with IoT hardware and embedded systems. So with things like Raspberry Pis, Arduinos, when we work with live workshops, we provide you with all these systems. So you don't have to come prepared with your own Raspberry Pi or your own Arduino. You can, but you don't have to. Code workshops purely concentrate on code, so that's a separate thing. And our latest stream is data science, where we focus on AI and ML. So our audience is from all across. We try to bring together students, professionals, and entrepreneurs who are, like, as we are based out of In5, which is the entrepreneurship hub of Dubai Internet City. We do that. We focus on practical applications. So we try to do something. In this case, obviously we want to work hands-on with edge connection. So we are going to have a use case. Our forum, you've all signed up for probably before. That's where we will share all our resources. That's separate from our site. You can definitely sign up there and RSVP for events as well. We're very active on social media. This is on our YouTube page as well, but you can see, you can tag us at Make Smart Things. So if you search for the assembly, you might not find us, but if you search for Make Smart Things, that's our social media handle on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and a number of things. So please do use that as well. Okay, so getting into our thing, I always share this slide first when we're working with the Internet of Things, just so that we give a quick recap. Obviously, if you've done it before, the Internet of Things, the one line, the dictionary definition is, it's a network of physical objects that can exchange data for value. Okay, so the data for value is the key part there. So we have a lot of physical objects in the world now where you can connect to the internet. We have smart devices, we have Fitbits, we have sensors operating at remote locations, and all of these can speak to each other now thanks to the internet, but it has to have an infrastructure provided that can transform that data for value there. So I've linked to an article which is written by one of the founders of ThingWorx, of PTC, named Jim Happelman. He's defined smart connected products, which are the basic functionality that we need for the Internet of Things. So SCPs can monitor and control. Yeah, so those are the two basic things. You are able to monitor the function of your remote devices on the internet over an app. You can control also, so you could turn locks, you could do different things. You could you could just do that completely remotely. And then once you combine those, you can optimize your processes, and then hopefully find you can also automate it so that there's no human involvement. Now, the diagram here is really important. These are the three layers of smart connected products, right? So there's the product itself. Like I said, it could be, in that case they've shown you, it's like your Fitbits or your smartwatches. It could be a Raspberry Pi. A Raspberry Pi is, or an Arduino could act as your product. And that is actually what we call the edge. And I'll show you that in the next slide. They connect to the cloud. So there has to be a layer of connectivity so that they can get to the cloud. And then finally, the cloud, we build apps that can connect to the cloud and display the data that we have. So this whole cycle is built in, and it's a nice way to do that. So, okay, so coming in, zooming in, I'm going to zoom in on the products part there. What are the products, right? What is the edge actually? So the edge is a term just for the actual, hardware that you have that is remote. Okay, we're going to separate it out. You can actually see more about the cloud, by the way, on clicking on that link. But if we should just spread it out, this is actually the ThingWorx architecture. So if you look at this, everything on the left-hand side, that is the edge, which is communicating over the internet through protocols, different variety of protocols, to the cloud. So everything that's on the right-hand side is in the cloud. So you have the ThingWorx server, which I told you is an Apache server. It connects to a database, which could be Postgres, but there are other options. And it also allows you to build internet applications or mobile applications that allow you to see what's on the cloud. So that we call a mashup. And we've used that in the past. So the mashup is basically a web page that allows you to see what's on the cloud. And we'll show you, we'll do a little bit of a recap later on if we get time. But we're going to focus more on the edge here. The edge is what's on the left-hand side. Now, the edge could just be one device, or it could be multiple devices that are connected, and they are synced up through a gateway. But usually the edge and the cloud are on different networks, right? So there are issues you have to worry about, like protocols, firewalls. Is it secure? And the number one concern with the Internet of Things is security. So you need a secure way of doing this, right? And ThingWorx defines what you call things, right? I mean, that's in the name. A thing is basically your edge device, whatever it is. If it's a Raspberry Pi, that is our thing, and that thing is modeled on the cloud. So we duplicate what we are modeling there. So just keep an eye on this. What's the edge? In our case, we're not going to have a gateway, but you can have a gateway. We're just going to have a thing that operates on that side. Okay, before we do anything further, I'm going to actually come back. I'm going to stop sharing for a bit, and I'm going to, I'm actually going to go back and share my, in fact, I'm going to probably just share my whole screen so that, because I'm going to be hopping across from different studios. So where is that? Okay, so coming back to our PTC cloud. So I've already activated our cloud. What you have to do is go to free trials. Right? I've already activated, so I can just go, after you've activated that, you just go to my trial downloads. So although we're not downloading anything, it does come under that my trial downloads. So you can see I've got free trials, whatever it says. I'm going to go to my hosted server. So you have to go to your hosted server. My hosted server, okay, it's just in the process of stopping. You'll all come to a screen like this. Once you have your trial download activated, you just click on Start Server. Okay, it'll take a little bit of time, but once you are actually able to connect, once it says start, it'll give me a few options. Even after it says started, you will still have to wait a little bit before it actually connects. It takes a little while to propagate, but this will give you the whole thing. Now, two things that you have to note here. What you need is your username is administrator, the default one, and your password is here. You can click on this to copy to clipboard. Okay, so if you are doing this, now I'm going to go, then after that you go straight to launch. It's not going to connect right away. You're going to see that for a second. It'll keep saying error connection refused because I don't have like the ability to connect to that right away. I have to wait. You usually have to wait for a few seconds before that does that. Let's go back to the slide. Okay, so connecting to the cloud, I mean, we're still activating the cloud from the edge, which is like, just start thinking about the cloud as an online, entity of its own. So we are going to look into details, but connecting from the edge, there are different ways to do that. ThingWorx uses a few different, methods to do that. Oh, somebody's messaging. Okay, Judy, I think you had an issue with that. I hope it is coming into there properly. Okay, so just coming back to what we were talking about in the slide. So connecting to the cloud from the edge, right? So there are a few different ways we can do that. One is the REST API. It's got a very good REST API where you can send REST calls. So for those of you who don't know what a REST API is, a REST API is an API that's exposed by, which can be accessed using HTTP requests. So I could be on a web page and I could send pings. I don't only have to use it from JavaScript or a web page. I could encode these in all sorts of languages, but it's only one way. So I can only send messages from the edge to the cloud. So I need to, if I wanted to set up a continuous thing, I'd have to keep polling the cloud. So which is not an efficient way. It requires a lot of overhead. I have to write code. I'm going to show you how, like there's a tool called Postman, which allows us to test our REST APIs. But when you actually have to write it, you have to do it using that. ThingWorx provides a number of edge SDKs which use something called AlwaysOn. AlwaysOn is their protocol, which is a duplex protocol. I'm going to explain a little bit more about. There is a C, Java, JavaScript, Android, and iOS based on what you want to do. It still requires code because it is an SDK. And out of the box, ThingWorx also provides edge agents. So you have, again, they use AlwaysOn. It could be coded in an edge SDK. It could be somebody's written an edge agent using an edge SDK, and it's ready-made software, so you don't have to do any code. We're going to be using an edge agent today, and I will explain that to you more. Let's go and check our server, see if it is. Yes, I am connected. So now remember, we are looking at the cloud. We're not looking at the edge yet. Okay, most of you would be familiar with some of these things. This is just our interface into the cloud. If you just go back to, if you just go and search entities, you're going to see all sorts of different things. All things, so you can see that things are there where they are, it's got a tabbed interface and all the things that I use. So there are also, there are different sorts of things that you can see. This provides an interface. We've seen this before, of course, when we've done past workshops. ThingWorx allows you to do projects, things, there are thing templates. We've explained that. We're not going to go over that again. The simplest thing you need to do is like, you want to create a data model of your edge object on the cloud, which you can later sync on. So those are things. That's where things go. So I'm just going to actually just go and quickly show you a very simple thing. I'm going to just create one. There are different ways you can create things, by the way. So I just went, you can either go here and click new and then select thing. Everything is autocomplete here, as you've seen before, and you can do that, or like you can do the other way where, you go from browse and do that. So once you come to this screen, you can see how to create different things. I'm just going to say this is a, connection test. thing, right? The only other thing I need to create a thing is I need to give it a template. So ThingWorx has an inheritance model, which we've seen in the past. The default thing template that you can use is called generic thing. So if I just do this again, autocomplete comes to the rescue, and I just click generic thing, you'll see the to do also goes to 0 because this is all the things I need for a thing. So once I create this, it'll go through, and this thing is created on the cloud. Okay. Now things have a few different attributes. Properties and alerts are the different data types that we have there. I'm just going to create one property. We'll just call it speed, for example, and you have to give it a data type. You just define this. I'm going to leave everything else there because this is just a test. And I can edit the value, for speed here itself once I do save. So we're going to look at services a bit later. Services are like functions. But if I go here, I can go and set my speed to, let's go and set it to say, 120. We haven't set units, but you can set units also. So ideally, this should be coming from the edge device. The edge device should be pushing, and that's what we're going to work towards. But right now here in the ThingWorx thing, I can edit this and put the value on here. So connect test thing is available here. Now, this is created on the cloud. Now, how do I access it from the edge? Remember, I told you about the REST APIs first, right? So we're going to first try out the REST APIs. So to do that, I'm going to go to a tool called Postman. Okay. It doesn't matter if you don't have it. You're just following along there. Before I do that, for accessing anything on the thing outside of the cloud, you need a key, right? And a key has to be associated with the user. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a key object. So I'm going to go here. You need an application key. Okay. And we're going to call it, let's say, test application key. Okay. Now there's an additional bit that you need from here. You need to associate an application key with an user. In our case, the only user we have is administrator. So I'm just going to do that. It's going to give you a warning because this is not best practice. Administrators have all the rights and they can do anything. So what you're doing by doing this is you're opening up your cloud completely. So because the ThingWorx API is so powerful, it can like automatically see all the, it can do anything from outside. So this is a very dangerous thing to do if you were in a live scenario, but since we're not, we're going to use that. Okay, so ignore the warning and just go with that. When you hit save, after that, you will see a key ID generated. Okay, you can set an expiration date if you want to say only for a few days. So it's only given me a thing for 1 day, which is fine by me. So you copy this to the clipboard, okay? And you keep this handy somewhere, your key ID. Now coming back to Postman. So this is a ThingWorx, this is the format of a REST API, what's it called? An HTTP request that you are going to send. Okay, it will always be the same. It starts in the same way. So you have the server ID. Remember, that is the server ID that we have. You can just get it from here. So we take this thing up to the ThingWorx part. It's HTTPS. So we have to give it a port. It's 8443 for HTTPS, and it's usually 8080 for HTTP. We've used HTTPS, so we need to do that. So under this, I need to go. Now, if you can see I've already got it. If I go here, so I go HTTPS PP, that is my server portal. I have to specify the port. You can specify either 8443 or 443 and ThingWorx and then things. And then I have to specify the name of the thing. In my case, what did I call it? It was connection testing, right? So connection testing / properties / speed. Now, if I go and hit send now, this will communicate to the server, but it'll give me a 401 because I'm not authorized since I've not specified an app key. So how do I get around that? I specify the app key and I do that and I say send. And now I get a 200 OK request back with some data. It's an HTML format, and you can see if you just scroll down a bit, it says the property value for my speed is 120. So this is my edge device in this case, and I'm communicating with the cloud, and I'm getting back a value directly with this. Okay, so this is just using the REST API to connect. We're not going to use the REST API in our code, but we're going to talk about that a bit. So you've seen how to make sure you keep your app key very carefully, right? That is what we are going to use a lot later on. So we've got the properties. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. So we've explained all this about edge SDKs and all that. Now we're going to focus in from here on edge agents. Okay. Now edge agents are a piece of software. It's a middleware that exists on the edge. It could be on the same machine as your device, which has got connected to sensors. So I could have a Raspberry Pi, which is connected to sensors, and then it also has an edge agent running on it, which is going to be what we have downloaded before. So the edge agent allows me to communicate, to control the data flow. So the edge agent acts as the middleware, and the edge agent does all the communication with the cloud directly. So whether I've got one machine, my edge agent could be on my gateway, but it will be doing all the heavy lifting for communicating. In our case, what we're going to do is we only have one edge agent, and we only have one, it will be sitting on our device. In my case, the edge device is my laptop. Okay, but it could be a Raspberry Pi, it could be anything like that. The edge agent is just a little bit of software that is ready-made and running there and takes care of all the communication. The edge agent can be quite powerful. It can allow you to change configs. It can allow you to push things from the cloud onto there. It can allow you to update firmware on the device, and it can even allow you to connect and remotely administer. So there are many things you can do, and it builds up. Kepware is a ThingWorx solution that's a bit higher end as an edge agent, but it operates as a server level. We don't have to worry about that, but you can definitely see that on the ThingWorx. Now, coming back to always-on WebSockets, that's the protocol that we're using here. Okay. Now, WebSockets is not a ThingWorx thing. WebSockets are basically a protocol that operate at the application layer. So the same as HTTP. So WebSockets, you might have used that. If you've used a Raspberry Pi, we use WebSockets to communicate directly two-way between machines. And WebSockets operate at the HTTP level, but they provide a duplex. HTTP is just a one-way thing where you keep polling and you keep pulling things. So they are kind of a counter to HTTP, and they also wrap around the TCP packets. So WebSockets are preferred for that. So what ThingWorx has done is taken WebSockets and made their own protocol called AlwaysOn. And AlwaysOn has a few more features. We won't get into that, but it is a little more sophisticated than just plain WebSockets. But AlwaysOn is maintained there. So your edge agent will maintain an always-on connection with the cloud. So there is continuous two-way communication. And you're going to see an example directly. So the edge agent that we're going to use is called the Edge MicroServer. Okay. So don't worry about this. I'm just going to show you the diagram again so you can see how the client works. So the client, everything on the left-hand side, that is actually what your cloud is. So it communicates, it crosses off the firewall, and you just assume if you have a Raspberry Pi, you'll install the Edge MicroServer there. And it will not only do that, it will also, so the Edge MicroServer can also act as a proxy. So like you saw previously, like we were directly communicating with the cloud from Postman. With the Edge MicroServer, you can communicate directly with, like, your Edge MicroServer will act as a proxy. So instead of communicating with, whatever server address, I can communicate with my local host Edge MicroServer on my LAN, and it will forward all the requests. So there are a few different things we need. Out of the box agent, like I said, so it binds remote things on cloud to virtual things. So there will be a copy on the cloud and a copy on the edge. This will make sense once we do that. And they will be syncing up with each other. So we can even do file transfer and tunneling. So we can send files from the edge directly onto the cloud. That is, in fact, what we will be doing today. The Edge MicroServer is not the solo software that we need. We are also going to need something called a process manager. So that is the Lua script resource, which I'm going to show you in detail. So don't worry, we don't follow all this at this point. So there are two pieces of software that we have to install. They are actually in the same directory. What you've got there from GitHub, the 4 or 5 MB file that I told you, that contains the Edge MicroServer and the Lua script resource, which is our process manager. So these two bits of software will work together to get us to do what we want to do. It'll make sense once we get on with that. So don't worry about that. Great. So let's see what we had. This a little bit more about the Lua script resource. Why is it a separate thing? The Edge microserver only connects. The Lua script resource is what actually manages remote properties, events, and services. It'll make sense once we do that. So it can be on the same machine as the EMS, which is what we'll do. My laptop is going to act as my Edge device, which will contain both the EMS and the Lua script resource. Okay, so let's get back to our cloud. Let's see what we are going to do next. What I want you to do, and this is how we're going to go about this. Okay, I use first of all, don't be confused by this. I use a 2-pane thing. You can use Windows Explorer with this, so this is just my, file manager thing. Everything, each pane that it has is related to like a Windows Explorer thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this. What I want you to do is go to, so I've synced up my GitHub already. I've put it in a thing called IoT Edge Connection. Okay, so IoT Edge Connection has all the files from GitHub. So I've synced them up. These are the important files that we need. You can open up code snippets. I've got code snippets. Oh, sorry. No, I've got this selected. So I've got code snippets. I'm going to be keeping on copying and pasting code from here. So please do keep that file open. So anytime I say copy from code snippets, you just have to go to this file and show that. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is, this is my main file. So the Edge microserver, there's no installation required. It's just a copy. Okay, so I'm going to create a folder. You can do this in Windows Explorer. So I'm just going to actually open up Windows Explorer because this might be a bit confusing. File Explorer rather. So under File Explorer, what I want to do is I'm going to go to a directory. I'm going to create a new directory in C drive. And for the sake of this thing, just do create into C drive itself. I'm going to go to C drive and I'm going to create a folder called EMS. Okay. So you go to EMS. I'm actually going to go here directly to GitHub. So this is where I copied my folder. I'm going to take this. I'm going to Control C and I'm going to Control V into go back to the EMS folder, and I'm going to copy that there. Okay. So now from there, I want to take all the contents of the microserver directory, and I'm just going to put it out into EMS. So remember, if you are doing this in a Raspberry Pi, you can do exactly the same thing. The Edge agent can be installed on anything that has either a Windows or Linux system. So unfortunately, the Mac might be restricted as an Edge device, but you don't normally use Mac-based Edge devices. But it has to have either Windows or a Linux-based system. The Raspberry Pi has an operating system. You can install the Edge agent quite easily on there. Okay, so just going back to my preferred folder. So, okay, I've got this. Actually, what I want to do is I want to install, I'm gonna just copy it into the root directory. So all these files, I'm just going to copy them and I'm just going to take it into EMS. And then I'm just going to delete the 2 things I had copied before, which are extraneous, right? Okay, so once you do this, you should have an EMS directory. I'm just going back to Explorer because I deleted it. It doesn't. So your EMS should look like this. Okay. So there should be a doc directory, etc, install services, and the files itself. So this is all that you need for running a server. Okay. So what we have to do here first to configure this, I'm going to do it in this itself. So please do bear with me with that. What we have to do here is I'm also going to create. So I want to create a directory that I can use for my files. Okay. On my Edge device. So I'm going to call it other. Okay. So other, I should probably put a file in it. I'm just going to take, let me just take the assembly logo. Maybe I had it saved somewhere else. So I'm just going to go and I'm going to copy any file. You can just create any text file or anything that you want. So I've got, this is actually the assembly logo. So this is my file on my Edge device. So just assume that's the way there. Okay, so now coming back to here, now the main work that we have to do, we have to go to the etc directory. Now the etc directory contains all your config files. So the EMS, the Edge microserver, is configured with a JSON file. Okay, and they will give you examples of JSON files. I'm going to just take this file and what you should do is in Notepad, just, you can call it, you can create a file. and I'm going to just save it in this same directory. And it should be called config.json. Another thing you can do is you can just take these examples and just copy them directly. So let's see. So you can see there, I've created an empty file called config.json. Okay, now what do we put into this? I want you to take, go to the comments, to the config.json section that we have here. So I've actually got the full thing from config.json there. Okay, and you just copy this whole section, and I'll explain to you what that is from code snippets, and you come back and you put it in there. So I'm just maximizing it, and I'll just explain to you. So I already have so I've copied that. You will have to change your host name to your server. Okay, so two important things that you have to change: your host name, otherwise you'll be connecting to my server. Okay, which is fine if you want to do it, but it's not ideal if you want to test it out with that. So you have to specify where your server is going to run. So your WS servers, you specify this, you specify the port. If it's HTTPS, you have to specify 443 or 8443. You have to put an app key. So I put a different app key, which I'm going to go back to Postman and just change, take it from there. I'd already copied it in Postman. So I'm just going to take this and I'm just going to change this. So just change whatever's in there. And you might see, like, if you open this up, once you run the EMS, it might change because it encrypts it. But for our purposes, you just enter it like this. The rest of it all can stay the same. It's not very important stuff. The logger gives you where the log messages are going to. HTTP server is the server that is being run. Remember, I told you that your edge becomes an HTTP server as well, wherever your edge your EMS is running. So this just specifies what kind of thing. So we specify SSL as false so that we can just access it on HTTP rather than HTTPS. This is going to be, these details are for your proxy. The other things you should leave as they are. We are not using certificates. So we want to we set those to false. Otherwise, it will not process. So you should leave everything else as there. File is a very simple thing. Now, here's the other important thing you want to do here. So where you've got virtual DIRs, remember we created the other directory. So we have to specify other, that is the name of our virtual directory, and the actual physical location. You'll notice that there's a double slash here because you have to escape the slash characters. So you have to put C drive //EMS//other. So this points to the physical location on the edge where I have my file. So I'm giving a virtual directory and I'm doing that. So every time I refer through the edge agent to other, it will be pointing towards that thing. And this will be more crucial later. If you are using a different directory and not using C drive /EMS, be sure to change it wherever you have specified physical directories. Staging is just a staging area that's used internally by the, by the agent for temporary files. So you can specify that. If you don't, it doesn't matter. Okay. So this is your config.json file that's there. All you have to do is change these three things: the app key, the host, and any location that you have there. So once you've closed it, let's go back. So you've got a config.json file. This is my configurator for my for my JSON section. Now I've done that. I'm going to come back out of etc. What I have to do is you can go to PowerShell or you can go to command. And make sure that you're in the right directory. You're in the C drive /EMS directory. And then just start the server. Okay, I'm going to start the server just by typing in WSEMS. Okay, so you can see it is starting the connection. And okay, so my server is there. Now, what does this mean? Remember, let's test out if our server is actually working. I'm going to go back to the Postman. And instead of using, this one, I'm going to just change this to localhost. And I'll use the 8080 port, and it's not HTTPS. So if I do this, you'll notice some okay, we've switched off logging. Oh, no, it's not working yet. Okay, still connection refused. What I need to do is I need to make sure you don't need an app key here, because remember, we've already specified the app key before. Oh, I've got the wrong port, sorry. It should be 8,000. Remember, we set it to 8,000. So now notice two things. I've not specified an app key. I've just specified HTTP, and it is automatically getting me results from the cloud because my EMS is acting as my proxy. So we've successfully set up an EMS. Now what we need to do after that is we want to go to your ThingWorx and just see what remote things are being enabled. Okay, so we want to, like, we have automatically set up the proxy. Now I'm going to go back to my system. Remember, we said there is a second piece of software that we need, and that is our Lua script resource. Okay, right now we want to go back to etc, and we said, you see that like config.lua.example is there. I'm in fact just going to copy it and just call it. I need a file called config.lua. Now, before you ask, Lua is actually another programming language. We don't have to worry about that thing, but ThingWorx uses Lua for all of its, Edge MicroServer only. You can easily write an Edge agent using other things, but Lua is pretty flexible. Lua is used a lot in IoT. And we've also seen in the past that Lua can just wrap around Python code. So if you had Raspberry Pi code, which is accessing sensors, Lua can just call the Python code from internally. But we're not going to be using Lua much. We're just doing very little with Lua. Again, I'm going to edit Lua. Okay, this is actually the full version. I don't need all this. I'm going to go back to my code snippets. So I've got Lua there. There's not actually much we need from Lua. So we are just going to specify a few things. So I'm just going to go back here and paste it. So this is all I need for my config.lua. I just need to specify that we're not using SSL, we're not authenticating. If we were doing that, it would definitely be helpful otherwise. So a few things that we're saying. So what this does is this creates a thing on the object. Remember, we've already seen how to create a thing on the cloud. This creates a thing virtually on the edge. So something called edge thing is being created. I haven't created a file called thing.lua. It doesn't matter if it doesn't exist. I need to create a template. And this is where the bit of coding comes in. So your edge thing template is there. My scan rate is the amount of time it goes. So it's in milliseconds. So every 10 seconds, my edge thing will be updating its properties and communicating to the cloud. So scan rate is for that. So that's just one thing that you want to. So the name here is really important. This is pretty much, if you look at it, it all looks a little bit like a mix of Python also. So this is Lua code actually. So don't worry about it too much. Okay, so I'm going to close this. And then I need to create my edge thing template. Okay, my edge thing template does not have to. So I have to go into a different directory. I go into etc/custom/templates. Okay, and you'll see an example there. This has got a lot of things. But what I want to do is create a very simple one called, I'm going to create a folder called, I'm just going to save it as, make sure you save it in custom/templates though. So your edge thing template, and it is going to be a Lua file. Okay, so let's see that. So, okay, so it's created, it's a blank one. Now what I want to do is I want to go and edit this. I'm going to go back to my code snippets. I don't actually need anything in my edge thing template at this point, so I'm just thinking I could probably just leave it blank at this point. Let me just check what I had normally. This is actually the finished version that I have. Yes, I do need to just specify this one line. I'm going to go back and I'm just going to create this. All this does is it says that it creates an edge thing template that extends the ThingWorx inbuilt. So you're just specifying a module. That's the only line of code that you actually need here. If I close this and I come back to that thing, I'm going to go back. I'm going to open another window from here because I want to keep my EMS still open. Oh, sorry, I mean CMD. And I'm going to do, I've already got that. I'm going to run the Lua script resource. Okay. Don't mind that where it says fail to set log level, that doesn't matter. That just configures like what your logs are doing. So it is running this. So my Lua script resource has already got that. Now, how do we know this is working? Because remember, we've done all this on the edge. The goal is to get it working on the cloud. So let's go back to our cloud system. Okay. Now our cloud system, you go to monitoring. Okay, I hope it's still connected. It does, it can always go inactive, so be careful with that. But no, I'm still connected. So you go back to monitoring on here. Under monitoring, under the monitoring tab, look at status and look at remote things. Okay. Now what you want to do is, there's a lot of stuff here that you can ignore. I want to look at unbound remote things because I've not bound it. Now, if you see, by magic, edge thing is visible. Edge thing is my remote thing. It's visible on the cloud. So this is a little bit of magic that is there. It's unbound, but it is visible. So it is automatically, with just a few lines, setting up the config.lua, I've been able to get my edge thing going with that. Okay. So just coming back to this, what do I want to do? Let's create our remote thing called, which twins up with this edge thing there. Now, how do we do this? We come back to our normal thing. We go to new and we create a new thing like we did before. And we are going to call it, we have to give it exactly the same name as is on the edge thing. So we have to call it edge thing. And for my template, I'm not going to use generic thing template because I need a specialist thing called a remote. I need a specialist template called a remote thing. And there are a few different options, but what I want is remote things with tunnels and file transfer. That gives me full access. And this will get some automatic functions that are there. Okay, and I hit save. Now what you're going to see is, without anything, automatically I get a connected folder, bit here. Okay, I get connected because it is just matching up to something on my edge device. And if I go to properties also, there's also a property, you can run that. You can see is connected, is checked on. Okay, and you will also get a pop-up. So if I were to go and stop my EMS here, it would automatically say edge is disconnected. And when I restart my EMS, it would automatically connect again. So we have successfully set up a connection from here all the way to the thing. Now, how do we know, like, what do we see here? What we want to see is, like, let's see. So services are functions, by the way, in Edge things. If I go here and there's a function called get directory service. Sorry, let's actually look at, instead of that, let's look at browse directory. Okay. So you have to specify browse directory, give it a path, and specify this. Why is this important? I'm able to see all my virtual directories now from the cloud, even though they are existing on my edge device. So this is already, in just a few lines, we've managed to connect an edge thing to a virtual thing and duplicated it. So if I want to see, for example, the contents of other, I can execute it specifying the path, and it tells me that I have a folder there. I have my file. Remember, this is all being done on the cloud. Okay, so some cloud server is able to access my edge device because I have given it permission. So this is very powerful indeed. And we're going to do a little bit more on this right now. So this is the basic thing, just to get things connected. You can also, by the way, if you go back to Postman, you can call these functions there. So what did we have? We have things, edge thing. I'm going to actually, I've got a post. So that was a get request, but this is a post request. And I'm just going to, I can call functions like get directory structure. And it'll automatically tell me like where, you have the other directory. So you can see automatically it pulls up things. So even my REST API is quite accessible from the proxy that we have here. So this is all very powerful. But remember, I told you we want to do a practical thing here. So what we want to do is, I'm just going to go back to the presentation. This is the last slide, I promise. We're going to install, and this is something we're going to use in the next workshop as well. So our scenarios, we're going to think of an edge thing. Our edge thing is going to be an engine, okay? And we're going to simulate this. Now an engine, what we're going to do is this engine has two sensors, and they're both vibration sensors actually. And each of the vibration sensors has 5 frequency bands that give different readings. So all in all, two sensors, 5 frequency bands each, we're getting 10 readings from our sensors reading the vibration. And we're going to simulate these values. We don't obviously have the real thing. There is another field that we need, which is called a failure. Okay, there are many different, if you have an engine, maybe you'd have different failure criteria. You might have, for example, the failure criteria could be low grease. If you suddenly have a sensor that is reading low grease, it says this is a catastrophic failure. So that will just be a Boolean variable, a flag that we're checking, which comes from engine. Okay, so we have 5 readings from sensors, and we have 1 reading which says a catastrophic failure has occurred. What we want to do with this is we want to analyze the data to see that for all these sensor readings, how many times does a catastrophic failure happen? So we want to be able to predict a catastrophic failure by looking at the frequency band readings. Okay, this is a top case for IoT where you can predict an outcome and you can maybe do maintenance based on your reading from sensors. Okay, so this is what we're going to operate, and we're going to model this on the edge directly. Now, how do we do this? Okay, let's come back. The first thing we do is we should stop our, if you want to stop your Edge microserver, just do Control-C. And I'm going to do the same for the Lua script resource. So I'm just going to stop it temporarily because I'm going to make a few modifications, right? So what are the changes that we want to do? I'm going to go back to my, and if I go back to now, if you just go back, let's have a look at our Edge thing. It says Edge thing is not connected because I've stopped that. So I can't actually execute a function. So if you see that, unable to, because we've got, there's no Edge connection. And if you go back and you refresh this, it's not refreshed, but let's cancel this. You can see the Edge thing says it's not connected because I've closed the server. So coming back to that, how do we add this? So for doing this, I'm going to again go back to I want to add properties in my custom, my templates. So I'm going to expand this and I'm going to just add a few things. What I need to do is I'm going to go to properties. You have to remember I said there is a property called failure. So I have to define that. And I'm going to do this by, I have to give a base type, which is number. I'm just showing you how to do this, but it is also there in code snippets. And the default value, I'm going to give it as 0. Okay, push type means that anytime there's a change, you should push. So don't wait. You can specify that you can do it according to intervals if you want to restrict the amount of data going back and forth. So this is one property. I'm just going to take from code snippets for the rest. If you see that, I've got these already copied. So let me just copy these first. Okay. So you can see I've added this on that. This defines all the properties. So failure is my catastrophic failure. I've kept it as a number instead of a Boolean. So 0 means there's no catastrophic failure. 1 means there is a catastrophic failure. And for each of my readings from sensors, so sensor 1, frequency band 1 is a number and a value. So S1, FB2 is frequency band 2. So we are getting 10 readings, and these are going to be properties defined from here. Okay. So I want to also do, apart from that, I want to add a function. And I'm going to copy and paste it directly because we don't have time to do live coding. So you can define services for your thing also automatically. So I'm defining a function called getSystemProperties that just returns a bool, or so, it does nothing much. It's the output. And getSystemProperties will be available to my thing when I go back to my cloud. All I have to do is define a function, and it's calling another function called queryHardware. QueryHardware is what we'll actually define. I've got that also signed up here. So queryHardware actually does, the difficult stuff. So I'm just going to take queryHardware and just paste it. So queryHardware is the actual function that we are going to do. All it does is it randomizes a value. It uses some internal functions, and then it just adds in values according to what the random value is. It seeds different things for S1, FP1. So it says failure. So we're just going to generate a few values based on this. So every time queryHardware is called, this function will fill in all the properties, and you're going to see what happens with that now. Now we have to look at another thing. I want to go back to my config.lua. Okay. And I want to edit something there. So remember, my scan rate was set to 10,000. That's too much. I want to set it so that it scans every 1 second. So I'm going to reduce the scan rate. I want to also run my function as a task. Okay, so for that, I need something else called a task rate. And I specify that, and I'm going to specify that also as 1000. Okay, so config.lua is set, as is my other edge, so I've got all the things. I'm going to go back to my, I want to add one more line in that. So for my task rate, I'm going to go back to that and just add one more line there called tasks.refresh properties. Now that I've set a task rate, I can execute tasks. So I can say every 1 second, call refresh properties, which is refresh property. Every time properties are refreshed, you should query hardware and generate new values. So every time the task rate is executed, every time the properties are refreshed, query hardware will be called and refresh the values. You'll see this in action, so don't worry about that. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to close this code snippets for now. And I'm going to go back to my EMS. Well, first I should start my EMS. And I'm going to restart my Lua script resource. Okay, I should have done that before. I should have waited for because it says my microserver is not online. Now it's working. Okay, fine. So I've got my Edge server working again and my Lua script resource. So now I'm going to go back. My Edge thing is connected again. Now what I want to do is I want to actually see the values that are there. So now I'm going to go to properties and alerts. Remember, we've not defined properties and alerts here. Okay. I'm going to edit. Once I edit, I'm going to go to manage bindings. And then it shows me all the properties that I've defined on the edge. I want to add it to my remote thing as well. So I'm going to add all the properties from there and say done. Okay, so now all my fields are there and you can see the values, the initial values are also coming in. And every time if I refresh, remember I've said for 1 second, oh, I have to save. Now, every time I go refresh, I will be getting a new value. So you can see the values are changing there. So from the edge, we are creating values that are changing and now they're getting synced into the cloud. Okay, we're going to use this data next week as our as our template for our system analysis, right? Now, I wanted to show you a few more things. I don't know if we have time. Okay, we've still got a bit of time. We'll try to finish up in about, maybe 20 minutes or so we've got. We're running a little bit longer, but that's fine. We'll do that. Now, I've got my edge data thing here. So I've got all my fields that are there. So I've got my sensor readings. We've done that in next to no time. And it is being synced up from there. What I want to do is I want to create, I don't only want to store my current values. So this is storing my current values and it's overwriting. I want to get a record of my history. Okay. Now, how do I do that? I need something that is called an info table. An info table is a ThingWorx construct that is like a table that you use in coding that uses these resources that stores records. So I need an info table which is of the structure that I have of my thing. And what that will be doing is that will be logging all the different entries. So I'm going to go to my this. I first need to create a data shape. A data shape is actually the style of the info table. So what I need to do is I'm going to create from here. I should create a data shape and I'm going to call it, what should I call it? I'll just call it simulator DS, okay, which is my data shape. Under simulated I have to define my different properties. So I'm going to define all the things I have. And I'm going to do it really quickly so you don't have to worry about it. I've got my failure data type, which is numeric, right? My failure data type is numeric. And after that, I'm just going to actually copy it across. I'm going to duplicate it and I'm going to call it S1 underscore FB1, which is also a number, right? So I'm going to so you just have to do that for each object. So we have 5. So we've got that. And FB5. And now we have to also, of course, have the second one. So let's do that. We add S2 FB1, There are easier ways to do this, but I'm just showing you how it works directly. The great thing is once you do this for one object, you don't have to, you don't have to replicate this for all others. You can just simply get onto the others and, just like using a template or using a thing, you can just duplicate them. So it's quite simple. So although this is laborious work at this point. So I've created my data shape called simulator DS. And this is going to contain, this is my record definition. Now, how do I actually include this? I go back to my Edge thing and I add another data type, which I'm going to call my info table property. Okay. My base type for this will be an info table. Now an info table needs a data shape, which we have defined. So we just specify simulator DS there. Okay. So my info table property. Oh, I should also make my info table persistent. So that is one thing. Persistent means that if I modify it later on, it will still store the value. So we've seen that in the past. Oh, no, it's duplicated. I don't want to duplicate. Let me move up and delete this. I'll just make sure it's persistent. I press the copy instead of that. So once we've got this, once we've got the info table property, this is where we're going to store all the values as we're written it. Right now, it doesn't do anything. We have to write a service that actually calls this. Okay. So we have to create a quick service that will have this. I'm going to add, remember I told you my info table property. I'm going to add an identifier property here, by the way, which uniquely identifies, it's just a number. And this is going to act as the primary key for my snapshot. I'm going to make it persistent and I'm just going to say save. So this is like, I'm going to set the value to, oh, sorry, not here. My identifier property. It's set to 0. So that's fine. 0 is okay. Identifier is actually going to be a counter that a running counter that we're going to write, which is going to write into info table, whatever we're doing. Okay. So just save it just in case. So let's go to services. Services are our functions that are defined for our thing. Okay. So under services, I'm going to create a new service that it's a local service, which I'm going to call record service. Okay. So record service is going to execute and write everything, the snapshot of my values into my info table and with the identifier as well. Now, how do I do this? We're going to go into here. I'm actually going to, since we're running short on time, I'm just going to take the code snippet again. Again, all of these are defined in the code snippet. So, if you're getting confused with anything, you can always look it up there. So you can just search for record service there. So I just have to, remember, this is not JavaScript code. Here we have to, sorry, this is not Lua code. This is JavaScript code. So we have to go back to semicolons and things. Now I'm just going to explain this to you very quickly. So you can actually type this out. What this does is me refers to the thing that you're calling this function from. I am updating the identifier. So the identifier, remember we set it as 0 and it's a running count. And I'm going to update it by 1. And then my info table property, I'm going to add a row to it, which has me.identify and all the values automatically connected. So if I do this and I say save and continue, and then I go and say, let's execute it. It's not going to give me any results. So I'm going to actually call it again, execute twice. And now if I go back to my info table property and I see the values, I can actually see 2 rows here. Okay. And you can see they have unique identifiers. Okay. I didn't put the identifier. So I need to update that. I need to update identifier in my data shape. I'm going to go back to this, add my identifier now. And that's a number. And this is going to be my primary key. So make sure you check on primary key. So this will be a unique identifier for that. Now, remember we said like you can always, we're going to create a mashup like we've done in the past. A mashup, like I told you, is a web application, right? And we're going to see these values from the web mashup. I'm just going to call it something like simulator mashup. So I'm going to go to design. My mashup is only going to have one thing. I just want to do a line chart. So let me find my line chart. So I'm going to find a line chart widget. I'm just going to drag and drop it down here. So this is my line chart. I want to bind it to my edge thing data. So what I have to do is I go here from data. I find the type of thing I need. That's edge thing. And I'm going to look for a function called get properties. So that gets all the properties from the edge thing. And I'm going to execute it on load. So done with that. And then I have to bind the resulting data. Get properties. Sorry. I'm going to bind the info table property onto my line data. I'm going to set a few things that allow me to, so I have to set a few different things. I have to set an x-axis field. For that, I'm going to set identifier as my x-axis field. And for my number of series, okay, I'm only going to show you for one. So number of series, let's set it to 5, right? And then I want to set my data for each of these. So I'm going to set my data field 1 as, you can see suddenly it's all available here. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm only going to show you data for one sensor. Okay, so then you save your mashup. And then if I go view mashup, I will see what it looks like to the end user. Oh, I didn't set the y-axis. Okay, just to try to fix it, because we are running out of time, I'm just going to quickly do this again. Let's delete info table property and save. Let's add it again. Let's make sure that we are. Simulator DS. Okay, so let's save this edge thing. Okay, so now we've got identifier there, so that's good. Let's go back to our services. Let's go to record service. So make sure that everything is there. I'm adding a row. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, let's run our record service again a few times. Once, twice, thrice. Let's go back to our edge thing. So look at our info table. Yeah, so now we've got an identifier there. Now let's go back to our mashup. And let me set the x-axis again. Yeah, so our x-axis field, we want to change it to identifier. Now it should work fine. Let's go and just refresh this. So now you can see our data in a time series. We've selected it as it is, and you can see the values on there. So you see, this is quite powerful. Now we have been able to go from the edge. We've got the data and we've got it into a different format. There is a way also, like we can easily record the service, and we can also save this as a file on the edge. So we work with the values, we change it on the cloud if we need to, we process them, and then we write it, we push it back to the edge. So here you can see everything is based up there. So you can get a value straight of your values. So everything from our info table property has come quickly into there. That about does it. Thank you all again. So this is what we've got. We've covered quite a bit of stuff. We've run a little bit over time, maybe about 15 minutes over, because we did face a few issues with the server. But thank you all for attending the session. What we're going to do next week is we're going to take this data that we have gone and collected from the system, And we're going to take this setup and we're going to bring it into something else. We've used a ThingWorx server so far. We're going to use a ThingWorx analytics server to create a machine learning model based out of all the data that we have. And then we're going to predict failure based on this. We're going to use this as our test data so that in the future, we can directly look at the vibration sensors and say that our engine is about to fail with that. So that is going to be a proper machine learning exercise. And we can do it all within the same ThingWorx exercise. You'll still need your ThingWorx Cloud preparation. So it is included in the trial, and we will be using that. So you won't have to install anything else. We won't need our Edge microserver next time or a Lua script resource. We just need the data. And in case you've missed a session, I will also obviously I will share the data as a file. Typically this data, like we would actually run it for hours on end to collect enough data, but we will have that basically on that. Okay, thank you everyone. And all of you signed up, please do go back. You have to RSVP again. It'll be a different link for next week. It'll again be on our thing. So please do sign up and it will be really interesting. I mean, we've done all the hard work today where we're getting all the details, but next week we'll be doing that. Okay, thank you everyone and have a good week.